Welcome to Debunked. I'm Michael Brooks. Debunked is your weekly guide to the best conspiracy theories, rumors, and sometimes truths that lurk on the margins of the internet. On this week's Debunked, is there a regressive left? Now, a lot of you have probably heard the term regressive left. Certainly anybody who spends any time in political circles on YouTube and social media. So that actually probably means most people haven't, but if you're watching this video, you probably have. What regressive left basically seems to mean from people who are constantly throwing it around is there are liberals and leftists who are afraid of criticizing Islam and are far too politically correct to confront the essential truths about that religion that only they and their leaders, people like Sam Harris and Majid Nawaz and others, have the courage to say. That Islam is inextricably linked with terrorism, that in many cases is an unreformable and retrograde religion, and that Muslims are dangerous. Now, obviously, there's some distinctions. Majid Nawaz still identifies as a Muslim, and what he says is different than what someone like Sam Harris says, but the overall gist is clear. It's that leftists and liberals are apologists for fundamentalism, human rights abuses, and sometimes even terrorism. Now, let's go over this argument on the merits. Why would it be that some people on the left would want to complicate the conversation we have on Islam? And are there a regressive left group of people that are actually justifying the behavior of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and human rights abuses in the name of Islam? Now, let's get the second accusation out of the way first. There are no prominent liberals and leftists in this country who justify fanatical terrorism of the variety of ISIS or Al-Qaeda. Everybody understands that these are obscene human rights violators and obscene activities acted out in the name of fundamentalism, although some of the complete picture of motives and reasons why might be a little bit more complicated than simply religious ones. I'm sure you could find some people on the internet who will spew conspiracy theories about it and maybe even attempt to justify these actions, but certainly no one, including Glenn Greenwald, is out here justifying beheadings, stonings, mass murder. It's not happening. Other people may go a little bit too far in some arguments around cultural relativism and justifying certain abuses. That may happen sometimes, but the bigger concern that most people have is that the human rights discussion around Islam is usually an umbrella through which to push bad policies, which undermine the work of reform and human rights and progress within Islamic culture and Islamic countries. And that's really the big problem with the people who throw around the term regressive left. They very rarely have any respect or connection to people on the ground working on these issues. And that's where someone like me comes in. The reason why we need to have a smarter and fuller conversation about Islam, which is not just relegated to some neuroscientist writing that the Quran is bad and talking to some people that have left the religion, the reason we need a deeper conversation is for three vital reasons. First, civic. Do we want to create a culture that empowers Donald Trump saying Muslims should be banned? Do we want to create a culture where young women are bullied because maybe they're wearing Muslim attire? Do we want to create a culture of conspiracy theory and bigotry around people practicing their religion, regardless of what you might think of it? The answer is clearly not if you're a liberal or a leftist. And if you don't see this discourse as being connected with the rise of Islamophobia and conspiracy theory in this country, I don't know what to tell you when even like someone like Sam Harris himself says he would vote for Ben Carson over Noam Chomsky on foreign policy. That's crazy. The second reason is actually from a security perspective. And this is what President Obama seems to understand and none of the hashtag regressive left people seem to get. By demonizing all Muslims and speaking in broad brushstrokes, we undermine our ability to work with partners inside communities and on the ground. Who are the fiercest opponents of ISIS actually fighting them day in and day out? Well, they're Kurds and they're Muslims. And many other Muslim groups and Muslim arms, Muslim fighting forces are battling ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Now, there's a complicated geopolitics of this region, which we need to get into, but that's going to be a much more profitable way of figuring out what's really happening other than, again, just saying the Quran is bad. And the third reason is that it's a good idea to know what the fuck you're talking about. This is why reading books on history, understanding what leads to terrorism, understanding the political conflicts that are driving the situation beyond simply Muslims being bad or Muslims being retrograde, leads you to have a better and more sophisticated conversation in terms of what's happening. Most people on the regressive left front seem to think that Islamic fundamentalism is a changeless, static thing that has always plagued Muslims in their backward state. When, as an example, if you're familiar with some basics of the history, you know that secular nationalism was the driving force of Arab politics through the anti-colonial struggles into the 60s and 70s. The failures of those governments and those experiments facilitated the rise of Islamic fundamentalist groups, as well as the United States' cash and partnership with Saudi Arabia. There's a lot of policies we need to change. No one is justifying terrorism. No one is saying that there aren't dangerous and extremist ideologies out there, but we need a holistic, full, smart, and patient understanding in order to address them. I know many of you will already be whining and freaking out in the comments section because I've insulted your savior. But I must say, is there a serious, real regressive left out there undermining the battle against fundamentalism and the battle for human rights? Nah, debunked.